fellas, let's go. Here we go. Big play. Trips open right, 334 stretch, Z post, X stop, on two. Ready?
This is my dad's show.
It's called the Quarterback Dadcast.
Hey everybody, it's Casey Jaycox with the Quarterback Dadcast. I want to say thanks to all of our listeners, thanks to all of our sponsors for all your support. We are continuing to enjoy this journey together, inspiring dads, but I want to take a minute now to talk about Acme Homes. You've heard me talk about them before, but I'm going to talk about them again. Bob Cumming, former college teammate, amazing leader, amazing home builder. They continue to take so much pride in the work they do, the craftsmanship, the attention to detail. Whether you're looking for a home up in Monroe, up in Sultan, up in Wenatchee, this is where they're doing their amazing things. So many people during the pandemic, as we have the ability to work from home, have decided to move out of the city to try to find homes where there's more acreage. Well, that's exactly what Bob and team at Acme Homes give you. So check out Valley Vista up in Monroe. Check out Daisy Meadows out in Sultan. And if you want to even go to Eastern Washington, check out Sienna Heights in Wenatchee. They're, again, amazing craftsmanship, amazing floor plans. You can visit them at acmehomeswa.com. And if you're interested in learning specifically about listings or mortgage opportunities, contact Jen at 425-308-8082 or Denise at 425-309-2318. So now, why are we doing a new ad? Because we want to talk about a partnership they have with Portage Bank. Kevin Jensen is one of the great lenders over there. He's the senior vice president. He's going to take care of you. And right now, if you obtain a mortgage through Portage Bank, Bob and team at Acme Homes are going to pay your $500 appraisal fee. I said that right. They're going to pay your $500 appraisal fee by buying a home through them, getting your mortgage through the folks at Portage Bank. So don't wait. Now's the time to contact Jen, contact Denise. Again, Jen's number is 425-308-8082. And again, Denise is at 425-309-2318. Visit acmehomeswa.com right now. Don't wait. Thank you again for listening to the Quarterback Dadcast. So with that, let's get right to today's episode. Well, hey everybody, it's Casey Jaycox with the Quarterback Dadcast. And this next gentleman is not only I'd say a new friend, but he's a client. He's someone I met early last year. And he is doing something I think every family would dream about doing. And his name's Patrick Sirmeyer, and he's the CEO of a company called Luxus. They're a staffing and recruiting company based in the Orlando area. But currently, Patrick is on a trip of a lifetime where he's going to talk to us all about it. He's going to talk about how the journey of taking his family from city to city, state to state, and just creating memories. I had the luxury of finally meeting him in face-to-face within the last few weeks as we record here in October. But without further ado, we are here also mainly to hear about Patrick, the dad, the father, learn how he is constantly working to become that ultimate quarterback of his household. So without further ado, the pride of Stetson University, Patrick, welcome to the Quarterback Dadcast.
Man, thank you. I really hope someone from Stetson does hear this and can affirm that. I think I've heard in one of your podcasts before, you reference your alma mater as the Harvard of the Northwest. Is that right?
Well, some people believe that. Yeah.
Well, funny enough, it was actually coined. I don't know who started this, but Stetson University was called the Harvard of the South when I went there. Might still be now. And fun fact for those that don't know, if you've seen the movie The Waterboy, that entire film was filmed in DeLand at Stetson University at their local high school football field and on the university campus, all over it. So, were you a member of the film? Or is this credits? No, I started in fall of '99. I think the film came out in '98, but I used to give tours of the college as like one of the jobs I had on campus, and so like I have all the fun facts about the Waterboy and all the pieces to point out. So.
Nice. I always wonder how the heck like Hollywood they find of all places Stetson.
Dude, I wanted the same thing. The same thing. But the guys are in that movie because I know they keep like almost the same crew together for a lot of different other movies. They're just odd characters. So maybe they just found this town out of the middle of nowhere, which is really close to Daytona Beach. A lot of people go to Daytona. It's about 30 minutes away. So.
Well, there you go. Fun fact trivia. If this comes up in Jeopardy, now our audience is we're
ready to go.
Yep, exactly. All right, man. So you have been super supportive of this podcast. And I love the feedback you share. And you even gave a shout out to Bob Cumming as you drove through Wenatchee. You're like, I feel like I got to go buy a house. My boy Bobby at Acme
I've
Homes.
never been to Wenatchee. I was driving through Wenatchee. I saw on the sign, and the only time I ever heard of it is through your podcast, through the ad. And I thought to myself, like, that it's like the power of the spoken word over and over in your head. I could just feel like I know Bob, Acme Homes, and I'm like, dude, I don't even. It's the only reason I'm going to be in this town is to buy a house. It's crazy. So I drove through, but I made sure to text you, let you know that. So.
I love it. All right, man. In true quarterback dadcast fashion, we always ask our guests, tell me what you're most grateful for as a father today.
Yeah, man, it's easy. It's not always easy, but currently right now it is. Which you mentioned already, we're on a year-long, I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe it, but it's a year-long remote living. It's not even a trip. We're just, living remote and experiencing as many different places around North America as we can. And my kids currently are 5 and 8. My daughter's 8 years old today. But the best thing about being a dad today and what I'm excited about is we've made in 4.5 months, we've made so many memories. I mean, not just your general ones of like travels and trips, but we've documented it all on a YouTube page. We just had a conversation at breakfast 2 weeks ago where we started just going over like random memories. Hey, do you remember this one time when we did this? And it's not the big stuff. It's not like when we went on a glacier tour and like that. It was just the little moments. And I'm really excited because I'm spending more time with them. My wife and I are, and I can tell some of these memories are sticking with them, and we're going to be able to tell those stories for years. Because I just look forward to be able to do that when they're 25 and 30 years old, and we talk about this year.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. I think it's such a cool thing, and obviously meeting your family last week, it was just to see what you're experiencing. I think is something cool, and I can't wait to hear more about it. For me, I'm most grateful for time I spent with my family this weekend. I had a chance to actually go to my alma mater. We went back for homecoming, so I spent time with some of my former college teammates. My son got to meet some of my buddies I played with, and that was fun. They'd met him before, but as he gets older, I think he realizes, man, this is pretty cool to go back and see where my dad played football and lets me live straight some massive Uncle Rico moments.
Yeah.
But that was fun. And then I spent time with my mom and stepdad. My grandma, unfortunately, is not doing well health-wise. She's lived a great life. She's in her mid-90s and going to pass away here soon. And just being able to be with my mom and stepdad and support them as they're going through this, because they're obviously a lot closer to it than I am. So I'm grateful that we got to spend time together this weekend.
That's great, man. That is great.
Okay, so let's dive in. I want to hear about, I don't know this about you, but talk about how, tell me a little bit about like more details about like family. We got 5, 8-year-old. Talk a little bit about your wife. Talk about each person's role and some of this journey that you've been on before we dive into some stuff previous when you grew up.
Yeah, so I'm actually a native Floridian. I know there's not a lot of them, but my parents are transplants. My mom came from Connecticut and my dad from Michigan, but his family moved down to Florida, I think late 60s. I mean, he's been in Florida for a long time, down in like Fort Lauderdale is where they're from. So I'm a native Floridian, so is my brother. And in fact, my wife, Anna, I met her in college at Stetson University. We've known each other since we were 18 years old. And we didn't start dating until we were seniors, but she's originally from West Texas. Her dad actually had gotten a role to become a professor of, I think it was a music department at a little college all the way out, even further west in Lubbock, Texas. It's actually, I'm trying to think what the name of it's called, Brownfield, or one of the cities that she lived in was just, and I've only visited one time, but her parents eventually got divorced when she was in her teens and they moved to Florida. And so she ended up finishing high school in Florida and we met in that area, but we've been married since we were 22, almost 23. So we're at 18 years now. And, she's not currently working, but she actually had worked for quite a while. She got a degree, much like myself. We both got degrees in kind of, was like a health science degree. I was going to become a physical therapist. She was going to work in nutrition, exercise physiology. And then we kind of had the entrepreneurial bug where we actually ended up starting businesses, and I worked in sales for a long time. So we've been doing that for quite a while. But yeah, our kids are 5 and 8. Carson's 5. Vivian is 8 years old. And we ended up with one of those where like she got the exact replica of her, both in personality with Vivian. And people tell me I got the exact replica of Carson. Crazy. Can't tell his left hand from his right hand sometimes, and full of energy and on the go constantly. And so I'm kind of, it's humbling to watch my children at that age, because now I realize some of the pain I put my parents through when I watch him, in the sake of just just, growing pains. You know what I mean? He's an awesome kid, but at the same time, I realized that he's nonstop. My parents I must have given them a lot of gray hairs when I was younger. So.
Yeah, you'll learn. I don't know if I mean, girls are just smarter species than us. I've learned to just accept that and admit that. And no offense, buddy, my son's listening. Like girls just they grow up faster. They're more mature faster. I like to think we catch up later in life as dudes.
Yep.
But they're just women are legit, man. That's why my wife's a general manager. I'm the head coach.
That's great. I heard, I think it was John Maxwell. I must have listened to like an audio for one time. He said there's an old phrase that says that, wisdom comes with age. And he says, no, sometimes age just comes by itself. He said, just how it is, man. And I feel that way about myself sometimes. Like, I'm getting older, but I also got to make sure I get some wisdom under my belt. But my wife has been, I call her that rock. She's been that for us for a long time. She's my voice of reason. I'm out there in the front lines, kind of slaying as much as I can. And she's in the back, letting me know like, hey, bad decision. Let's go this way, but she's a perfect GM for us.
That's awesome. Okay. So grew up in Florida. Take me back to what was life like growing up for you, and share how your parents, specifically your mom and dad, how did they impact you now that you're a dad?
Yeah, it's, it's one of those things where I think back all the time. I often feel like every adult, every child that becomes an adult, like has to take a moment to go back and apologize to their parents, because there's just so many times growing up where I didn't appreciate what they did or sacrifice they make, or I just didn't know. But I look back at it. I grew up in a town called Oviedo, Florida. A lot of people know it, I guess, on the map today. But at some point, maybe we just got lucky. We moved there in the mid '80s, and like sometime in the mid '90s, it got voted as like number one place to raise a family for like 2 years in a row. Probably because we moved there, I'm guessing. I don't really know, but either way. But yeah, my dad worked construction labor, did iron work for pretty much his entire career. He was in Vietnam right out of high school, got drafted. Him and his brother both got drafted to Vietnam, and came out of Vietnam, got back in the workforce, and kind of found construction labor. And my dad's a perfect example of just, putting food on the table, working hard, doing whatever it takes. He'd coach our sports leagues and baseball teams. And, I just remember he'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning to get to work. He'd come home by 3:00. He'd be dirty and tired, clean up, and, time to go to baseball practice. My mom, like most moms, was keeping it all together with the glue. I mean, my dad was working so hard that I feel like the majority of what I got in life of just understanding of different principles and different things came from my mom. She didn't work for the early years because my brother and I were pretty young. So I've got one brother who's 6 years younger than me. But then later on as we got older, she went back to school and started her own career and started her own business out of the house, and did really well for that. And so they're the perfect example I could think of just sacrifice everything they possibly can to make sure their kids had a better life than they did. My dad did not go to college. My parents want to make sure that they were very particular. My brother and I went to college, finished college, because really nobody in our family had done that. And to them, of course, if you come from a family that's like that, you kind of figure like, what, this has got to be the golden ticket. And, I'm glad they did that, because I was the kind of kid who definitely needed structure in my teenage years. Without structure, I've got quite a few family members, cousins, and different extended relatives who have gone off the deep end in more ways you can imagine. And some of them are just not here on earth anymore. But I got to give my parents credit for all they did.
How often have you mentioned like apologizing to our parents? How often have you just, now that you say that out loud, just called one day to say, hey, mom, dad, thanks?
I apologize to them in moments when I see things happen with my children or a sacrifice I have to make. It has to be kind of in the moment, when I realize, especially if I see, if I get a night with not too much sleep, or I'm stressing about something, I have to kind of relive just little things, like I never forget when my parents just, one Christmas in particular, I think that I joined a basketball league because my friends were joining a basketball league. I didn't know at that time, like how much of a financial stretch it was for my parents just to sign me up in the basketball league, and I'm thinking to myself, like I've never even played the sport in my life. Right. But like most parents don't come to their kids and say, let me just tell you how stressed I am trying to get you in this league. Right. But like whatever it was, 60 or $75, like that was a huge deal for them one Christmas. Mm-hmm. And my dad, I remember my birthday is on the 21st of December. So it's like 4 days before Christmas. Mm-hmm. My dad came home one day with a metal pole that he had welded himself. That was going to be the base of the basketball court. He had cut out a piece of wood for the backboard. And for my birthday, I got a small basketball and a basketball hoop. And when he handed it to me, I was like, what's this? he's like, well, I'm going to build you a basketball hoop, And so I watched him put it in the ground with the concrete and drill the wood into it. And then I had something to practice with. But like just to be able to kind of get me a rim and a basketball and sign me up for that league, like I know today how stressful that was on them. And so I'm always appreciative of those kind of things.
Wow. And talk about what's your brother doing?
Funny enough, my brother's a recruiter.
Okay.
Actually, we worked together in the past. He works for an engineering company, similar industry as myself. So.
Okay. Very cool. So as you think about like that story you just told about your dad and like that's like stories that will never leave a memory. Like that, which I would think grounds you to this day and just helps remind you about like how lucky and grateful we are in every aspect of our life. But as you think about you as a dad, how much does like a story like that impact you as a father?
Man, a big way. I mean, I think about the fact that every little decision that got me to this point, whether it be the people that supported me, just the fact that my parents really felt like it was a big deal for me to go to college and have that structure and just to have other opportunities to be networked the way I am. I see that I've been able to either achieve or do some other things that they didn't get a chance to do because of whatever sacrifices they made. And so like when I think about it, like, and I go to the grocery store today, like something I never take for granted. And I know it sounds really corny is the day you can go to the grocery store and not look at the price on the shelf. There's a myriad of different steaks and you want this steak and you grab it. Right. And I just think to myself, when, there's just certain decisions that I don't have to make today that my parents had made for me. And the same thing for my wife, Anna, she came from an entire family of teachers, all educators. And so they were really smart, very disciplined and, put the right principles inside them. But when I look at my kids today and some of the privileges they might have, my first thought is I want to be able to say, hey, let me just tell you, the old story of I had to walk in the snow uphill, both ways, 6 miles. Like I didn't really do that, but that old story that people usually tell, I try to figure out like, how am I going to instill within my children the value of the life they have, not to be thankful, but at the same time realize that like, this is the life they live, but then also capitalize on it and do more. Because I think the idea that every parent wants is you want your kids to stand or sit on your shoulders, see a little bit higher than they did. And you hope the same thing happens for every generation after you. And so at this stage of the kids, 5 and 8, obviously they're young, but I'm constantly thinking like, how am I going to find small, tiny ways to instill in them the ability to appreciate the life they have, help others, and then be able to do the same thing for their kids at one point.
Yeah. I mean, I think you got to just communicate, keep talking and talking and talking. And the same thing we talk about with my friend, TED-based questions. I use TED-based questions on my kids all the time.
And that's been a big one for me. And I appreciate you teaching me that because it's the habit I'm working on every day. So
it's such a good reminder of, and I think like Eve, each day we think about what are teachable moments or what are ways to stay grounded or what are ways to talk about how fortunate we are, whatever it may be. And maybe it's like next time you go to the grocery store, it's like grabbing that steak and like, man, this is when I was a kid, I couldn't do this. And I don't want you to feel guilty, Vivian, but I want you to be proud that we can do this right now. And it doesn't mean we can do it 2 weeks from now or 3, but right now we can. Let's appreciate it.
It's appreciating things you have. I mean, health is always a big one people talk about all the time. It's sad because it usually takes for me someone that I know who's become ill for me to start appreciating health again. When the truth is we would all love to say that we appreciate and don't take it for granted at any given moment, but it's just not true. I mean, I usually have to be reminded of something negative to help me kind of snap me back to reality.
So true. We all do. You're right. I think unfortunately we as humans were flawed and we got gaps, but I think it's about staying present to know what are those things we want to work on. Okay. So, are mom and dad still with us?
Yes, they're still alive and healthy, 71 years old. So
God, love it. Love it. Still, and they're in Florida still?
Still in Florida. They live probably 15 minutes from where I mentioned we grew up. They live in a town called Winter Springs, close to us as well. But both retired. My dad eventually, after all of his years in Vietnam, ended up getting full disability from the military for PTSD and all the different things he had to go through. And, if anyone growing up, my dad never talked about it. He was pretty closed up emotionally. He didn't discuss any part of his time in the military. He's got a brother named Patrick as well, named after him. And he's had a whole different experience. He'll talk about his time in the military, but it's my Uncle Patrick actually helped me understand what him and my father went through, to kind of figure out kind of the the deep state and the things they had to experience.
Mm. How have you ever talked to your dad about it to this date, about some of the stuff?
Yeah, I've dug in a little bit. It's still something I think he's not comfortable discussing completely, but we'll go through some old picture albums that he's got, and I'll ask a few questions, and he'll come out of his shell sometimes, but you're not going to get him to sit down for 45 minutes to an hour and tell you all the stories. It's just something he wants to close up, make sure he keeps in a whole different chapter in his life.
See, like that is what I have massive gratitude for, is like, that's, our generation, we never had to experience that next level of freedom that, your dad, and like a buddy's dad. I got some friends who are still in the military over there, overseas and back home. But man, like those, and even like when you visit some of the museums, like World War II museum I saw in New Orleans, which is one of the most amazing places I've ever visited. I don't know, you just, not to get too off track.
I agree, man.
Much love for your pops for what he did. Okay. So how do we come to the title of the Sentient Life?
Gotta give my wife credit for that one. We spent, so it was in 2020. Of course, everyone knows what was happening and kind of what we're going through at this point. And we had realized that if we're going to be working remote, we're not strapped to staying at home. Kids were at a age where we realized that they're not super involved. I mean, they were in karate and flag football and dance, but like they hadn't gotten competitive enough where it became super important for them to be there. So we just it all kind of came to a head. We realized, we love to travel, and we said, let's see if we can make this work. And we spent 9 months planning this remote life year, if you want to call it. And my wife, Anna, came up with the term, she had heard the term sentient. And I believe if by definition, it means someone who has the ability to feel and sense. And I think it's more like kind of trying to think if it's like a mythological type scenario. But when we looked in that definition to feel or sense, we realized that the whole intent of the trip we wanted to do was to get out of our comfort zone, get out of the monotony of the things you're doing on a regular basis, and go out there and feel and sense and experience different things. So she came up with the term, the sentient life. And it just, it took legs, and now it comes out of our mouth all the time so easily.
Love it. So for those that don't know, I know we kind of teased it a little bit in the intro, but so talk about where we at. We're on October 25th as we record today, when this episode will come out. Actually, maybe near your birthday, maybe a little bit before. So that might be a nice.
Post it on my birthday. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Talk about what this trip has meant to you so far, and what are some lessons you've learned as a father, and maybe how has this trip made you better as a dad?
Man, that's a good question. Good statement too. So, the intent of the trip, as I mentioned already, was to disconnect from our regular life. And we've all got routines, which, by the way, I've come to appreciate routine in a big way now that we've been on the road. We wanted to do this, but the logistics I talk about it, and the way I usually phrase it is we travel with baggage. And what I mean by that is we're not 25 years old living out of a van. It's a very popular thing people are doing now. You see couples constantly who, if you're on the road, you'll see these, I think they're Mercedes Sprinter vans, different types that have been converted, and they live in the van, and that's just what they're doing. They're in an RV, and, they're just living that life. And for us, we wanted to do this, but we also knew that, we've got 2 dogs, 2 kids, we've got full lives, businesses. We just got a lot going on. So we had to take months to plan this out, rent out, our house, kind of pare things down and go, okay, what are we taking with us? What are our essentials? And, we've been on the road now since June 1st. So I guess we're coming up 5 months. Currently at this moment, we're in a house that we rented that's in Vancouver, Washington. So I'm not too far from you. We're just very close to Portland. And we've been to a lot of amazing places. We took 4 days to go from Orlando to get to Denver. We stayed 30 days in Denver. Then we did the typical summertime national park tour of Yellowstone. I went to Grand Teton National Park, made our way over to Seattle and your neck of the woods there, stayed there for about 30 days. And then we got into Canada, went to British Columbia, stayed in Vancouver, and then Whistler, went over to Banff. And then now we've come back down through Montana, and we're going to go down the California coast during the winter time. And so you can imagine we're basically trying to stay 2 weeks to 4 weeks at every location. So we can just kind of settle in a little bit. I think if we didn't have the kids with us, we could probably be a little more on the fly. But the best part about this, though, is that this whole disconnecting, and I've pared down my hours, which I've never done ever in my working life. As a business owner, you do whatever you have to do to keep the business thriving and running. But at the same time, as just someone who grew up in this kind of, I don't want to call it workaholic, but I don't know, I got into the habit of working all the time. Like they call it, you should just never turn it off. Mm-hmm. And I know people that work in sales or some type of performance-based job, and to them, they just never turn it off. And it used to be a point of pride for me. And I've had to be disciplined and intentful about turning it off, knowing when, creating that habit. That's a really, really difficult thing for me. And now I've had the opportunity to spend some mornings with my kids, having breakfast with them and, having a conversation during breakfast and, being able to say to my son, hey, let's go do this. And we'll go outside, and he's got a few different baseballs and a bat, and we'll just go to a park and play. I really wasn't doing that midday. And of course, if we were back home, they'd be in school by now because they're of school age. But there's just a lot of memories, and I'm starting to get better at disciplining my time as to like, when am I working? When am I not working? And being present, which you talk about all the time, being fully there. And my wife and I joke about it all the time. I'm the kind of person that's always doing 2 things, 3 things at once. I'm a multitasker. What's sad is that I'm not even a good multitasker.
No one is.
I've just created that habit of always multitasking. And the truth of the matter is I do 2 or 3 things average instead of doing 1 thing great. And so these are things that it's like separating myself from the life I usually live to now be somewhere else. The benefit that I didn't expect was being able to be more conscious and thoughtful in these topics, as opposed to constant distractions. And although we miss the comfort of our life right now, we miss all our friends and just different habits and things we had, I'm really loving the idea of just being disconnected.
Yeah, man, it's really cool. And I love to hear you talk about, just that choice of, being present. I heard someone tell me one time that, there's no one's good at multitasking. We think we are, but we're not, because you're not, like you said, you're doing 3 things really half-assed. If you were talking to me and I'm looking down at my phone, I'm not hearing you. I'm not listening to you. I might think I'm listening to you, but I'm not. And when we can take that time, and dads, if you're listening, like putting the phone down, get away from your computer, get away from what you're doing, whether it's 5 minutes, 20 minutes, doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be 7 hours, but like just very intentional time, like Patrick, you're doing, I think is awesome. And not only is it good for your kids, but it's good for you.
It's giving me clarity. It's giving clarity of thoughts. I'll give you one thing I had the opportunity to do that I haven't really taken time to discipline and do in the past is having deep thought about a topic, like allowing yourself to like marinate on a topic and get creative. I think that as a small business owner and wearing a lot of hats, my day was just so task oriented that I had lost the ability to think creatively and think deeply about certain topics that are important. And this has actually allowed me to do that, which is really awesome.
Oh, that's great. How, as we think about, when you get back, when this journey is over, tell me how these habits are going to stick, and don't go back to the old Patrick.
Yeah, my wife and I have been having that conversation a lot. I mean, we probably discussed this. The way we bring it up is we say,
she did not tell me to ask that, for the record.
Yeah, she says, we always say, what's going to be different when we get home? And we'll ask the kids that too. And between her and I, the answer between both of us is always everything's going to be different. And what we mean by that when we define it is, we realize that just extracting ourselves, even from the great people, the friends, the neighbors, the people that we love and appreciate, it's the old phrase of, you give something up and your heart grows fonder of missing it. And I think that like, that's what that is. I think we're going to settle in, and now I have the chance to almost with white space, create new habits instead of falling into other ones. That's the other thing. I mean, I think of like social media, for example. I have social media platforms just like you do, and you scroll through them like a lot of people do. And I realized that some of the concept of just having that social media platform, like you're losing your ability to make decisions. They're almost being made for you because it's just the inundation of information in your head. My wife went through a habit change where she decided what she would do is she would log out of her, say, Facebook account from her phone every time she finished. And just that little extra step of her having to go in, log back into the application. Oh, it takes 10, 15, 20 seconds, putting your information back in, or even deleting the app and downloading it again, caused her to stop even like using it nearly as much. And she realized it's not that important. Those little things are just, those are stuff that like the disconnecting piece that we're doing right now is causing us to be able to go back with a fresh slate, which is something we needed. I don't know how most dads feel, but for the first few years of my kid's life, like there were times where, I mean, everyone knows this, like it's stressful, but it was stressful in the sense that like as a dad, I only felt like I was just a provider of income. Not because my wife made me feel that way, but it was just the kids only wanted her because they were babies. I'd come home and they'd be sleeping or screaming or tired or something. I'd do my part, and my brain was only focused on how do I help my wife? How do I keep her sane? How do I keep our relationship strong? Because right now, this 1-year-old really doesn't want me. Like she only wants mom. And I got done with a stressful day at work, and then I'd come home going, this is even more stressful. And I can see why a lot of dads don't come home. I can see why a lot of dads fall into like deep work, working 60 hours a week, or why even some dads fall into alcoholism, because there's a lot of stressful moments. And that probably was more trying on our marriage for the first few years than anything else.
Hey everybody, it's Casey Jaycox. I want to take a quick break to talk about my friends up at Catch Sitka Seafoods, who continue to be just an amazing loyal sponsor. And for those of you who've tried it, thank you. For those of you who haven't, you're missing out. And now's the time to make sure that you visit catchsitkaseafoods.com and get some of those amazing smoked salmon. Get some of that amazing rockfish, blackfish, black cod, salmon, whatever it might be, whatever you like. But what's great about opportunities they have, now's the time to subscribe to a box so that you're going to get that reliable cadence of the best fish directly from the dock to the doorstep. And what's great about Catch Sitka Seafoods, they make it so easy. So those that maybe aren't the best chefs at home, doesn't matter. They're going to give you this beautiful, nice laminated recipe card that tells you exactly how long to cook it, whether you're going to barbecue, you're going to bake, you're going to fry, whatever the way you want to do it, they're going to make it easy. So please visit them today, catchsitkaseafoods.com. Sign up for a subscription so that you know you're going to get the best fish delivered directly to your door. You won't regret it. And just like my daughter Riley says, Dad, I don't even like fish. And she does now because of my friends up at Catch Sitka Seafood. So with that, let's get right back to today's episode. Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, you're talking about stuff that's real, and
Yeah.
I remember when I was shoot, can't remember, 31, when my son was like, we'll call it a little over a year, and he was going to bed, and I'd get home at like 6:45, and I'd have 15 minutes with him before, and I'm like, this was not what it's about. And I still remember my old neighbor, Renee. She'd say like, God, time goes by fast. It'll be like, you're going to snap your finger. They're going to be in high school. And at the time I was like, why can't you, man, let me just enjoy this moment. Like they're young still. And that was yesterday. And I remember going to my boss, shout out to Angela Ronica, where I changed my hours and she supported me. And I literally worked from 7 to 4. And then it allowed me to get like 2 hours of like quality time. And I thought I was a better dad. I was more productive at work because I was not going either way. And so I think like, that small story, but what you're doing now, I'd be interested to talk to you in a year on how this impacts you, because there's so many great habits, memories, that, and what an opportunity each day to go experience something different without the pressures of, we got to get to baseball, we got to get this basketball, we got to go to dance.
Dude, I mean, I think about that because I've got so many friends I get to talk to and watch, from a distance now. And it's just so easy to like fall in that rut, where you just, I don't know, your day is already pre-planned for you. Like there's just no time to yourself. Like there's no conscious decision making. Like it's all the decisions are already made for you. And that thought right there stresses me out because I know that time's coming. I mean, we're going to get involved with sports and events and different things as we get into our life because everyone's busy and everyone loves to stay busy. But this moment right here, like I've always envisioned, and I hope maybe it's true, maybe I don't even know. I mean, we'll look into it. But like, I hope that this time in this year will like put the foundation for the relationship with my kids and with my wife and I, that when we get back, we can have those like deep conversations. We'll be able to look at each other, and not my wife and I, but meaning like say myself and Vivian or myself and Carson, and like, look each other in the eye and have a conversation that's meaningful. Because I do see a lot of parents that I just know who, they're so busy. None of them are paying attention to each other. It's just how it is. And maybe if they had the chance to like pull that Band-Aid off and disconnect for a little bit, they might, but it's hard to do once you're plugged in the matrix.
You got to work. I mean, here's a perfect example. My daughter plays on a basketball team. It's like a 35-minute drive from here. And so she has practice on Tuesday nights for 2 hours and then they do an hour training afterwards.
Yeah.
So instead of being like, we had to kind of, my wife and I both had to change our kind of our mindset. Like, dude, that's a 3-hour date. Let's go. So we drive up and it's now for the next 4 weeks. It's Tuesday night, date night, where we're going to go dinner. We're going to offer to drive the families and it helps out a couple other families. And then we can go to dinner, hang out, then drive back home. But it's about being intentional about that because it's, I mean, we're all tired, we're all stressed, we're all busy, but if we, I have this thing I like to talk about that impacted me is that 1440 mindset. We have 1,440 minutes a day. And what's great about them is they might be really, really good today or really, really bad today. But the best part about once it hits 12:01, that clock resets and I get a chance to either fix it or try to replicate it.
That's it. I love that.
Okay. So far you said 5 months into this Griswold family truckster. Talk about the most happiest moment you've had as a dad on this trip.
Man, I have a lot of them. So see, it's not the big things. It's not, it's not the, being riding up a gondola with my family and just getting a beautiful view. It's not the stuff you might think. I think the thing I'm just most and I've enjoyed is there's been like a really good relationship developed between my daughter Vivian and my son Carson. And I watched them become good friends. I watched how they play with each other. And I've also watched them become really attuned because we're spending so much time together. I mean, now we're like 24/7, you know what I mean? Where there's nowhere, you can't go anywhere. They've become really attuned to the emotions and feelings of Anna and myself. And I've watched Vivian at times, even like stop and ask if I'm okay. And I don't think there's no way she would have been able to do that back home because I would have been in an office. She would have been at school. She wouldn't see me. Like, you just get to know nuances of people. And so it's not one memory, but it's the ability to just have that sense, that sensory feeling about people who are close to you. Like, I think we've got that, and I hope we can keep that.
So it's like what you're describing. I wrote down the word empathy.
Then maybe that's empathy. I didn't do a good job. It's
No,
funny.
it's all right.
Anna mentions to me that if I had to pick one of my weaknesses naturally is empathy. Like, that's something I constantly work on.
How come?
I think my guess, I don't really know for certain. It could be a little bit personality, but I also grew up in a family where we didn't talk about a lot of stuff. Like I don't know. It's not like, maybe it's the way my parents were raised, but we did not talk about topics. Like, we didn't go deep. I mean, surface level at best, or sweep it under the rug type scenarios. I married a woman Anna, who came from a family who talks about everything. She has all sisters. When her parents divorced, she was raised mostly by her mom. And I'm talking like I didn't have a choice. We had some uncomfortable moments of, in our early days being married, where it's like, I was ready to end this conversation and she would just keep digging and digging, and it caused fights for us. But like today, I'm much better than I was when we first got married, and I've got a long way to go, but I have to give Anna almost all that credit for that one.
That's awesome. But I think empathy is, I think a lot of dads who listen, if you're like our age, we just didn't grow up that way. Nothing against, some dads did and some people did, lucky. And I think now I find myself doing the exact opposite, where always talking about everything, forcing conversations of uncomfortableness, sharing my own failures with my kids, whether it's failing now as an adult or failed as a high school kid, or struggles I went through. Cause I want them to know, like, listen, you're going to go through this stuff, not if, but when, and we're on your same team. Knowing we've been through this thing before. And I think, empathy, I wrote that down squared. I mean, that's a good, one question I got from a previous guest I interviewed, and he asked, how can I be a better dad today? Or how can I be a better husband today? And so like, even at meal, that's a question, that's a dinner time conversation tonight you could have with your kids and wife, and it'd be interesting to see what they say.
It's funny you bring that up. So my son, I mentioned he's 5, so you can imagine his limited brain. I think early on when you and I got to know each other, we were talking about that exact topic, dinner table. Yep. The challenge was, let's talk about these topics. Let's use TED questions. Let's be vulnerable. Let's, work on talking about weaknesses or areas where I've messed up and recognizing that, because it helps, progress conversation. And I remember asking Carson, I was like, well, Carson, what can dad do to be a better dad for you? And he's like, you could give me some more candy. I was like, okay. He's like, well, you can let me watch a TV show tonight. I'm like, all right, buddy. All right, we're done with this conversation. I'll check back with you next year when you're 6, so.
Oh, but what as I think about that, as how my curious mind goes, I'm thinking, well, tell me what kind of candy, bud. Keep digging and get to the root of where that sweet tooth comes from. But no, joking aside, but it's fun to hear where their brains are at. And I think the more we can show as an example of that's normal, we're setting them up for success later in life. Because like right now as a society, where the kids will text, they're 5 feet from each other. I'm like, no, go pick up the phone or go talk to them. Or if you want someone to spend the night, go call them. You're not going to text them. Like I'm sorry to be that old school, grumpy old guy, but like the power of like communication never is going to go away. And so I don't care how good technology is. I want my kids, my family to be known as people who can communicate, look people in the eye, shake a hand, old school stuff that I think never was going to go out of style.
I agree with that 100%.
So you mentioned empathy. And one of the questions I always like asking dads is we think about areas of their dad game where they're realizing that, because I think this trip you're on, your dad weaknesses are going to get exposed. I mean,
they already have
patience.
They already have patience, man. Patience.
So talk about what's one area of your dad game, maybe you already gave it the answer, but that you're super self-aware about, you're working on to become just a better leader of your home.
Yeah. So, patience will definitely be number one. I think you and I have discussed this before. And it's funny, I've heard in so many of your podcasts, it must be the number one trait of a father that he's worked on. And I've heard people say like mothers just have that ability, and not all mothers do, but the majority of them, they're just either empathetic or they just have patience with their children. And, with me, I think I'm just like, so like end game results driven. I think that's where I lack the patience. And, like I'm working on that not just daily. I mean, I must have to find moments 16 times a day to be patient, hold my tongue, don't say anything, listen. And for instance, I mean, you and I talked about this just in our own coaching for my company, the ability to sit back, say with our employees and ask the right questions, dig in, let them come to the answer themselves, let them have their own thoughts and be able to figure that out and get that brain wrinkle for themselves. When I think to myself, dude, I could tell you the answer in about 10 seconds, but I'm going to have to actually have a 40-minute conversation to get that. And that same format with my kids goes the exact same way. And I don't mean like when my son, wants to take 15 minutes to put his shoes on, you know what I mean? Cause he's just, playing around. I'm talking about like just the idea of going, okay, here's an important moment for us. Let me be patient. Let me talk through this. Cause the one thing that I'm conscious of that I know more than anything, it's not what you said, but it's like how you made them feel or what they experienced. And if they saw me have to exercise patience, or if they saw me or I had a chance to really get frustrated, or I would have got frustrated hourly or like yelled in the past, but now I'm not doing that. I know they're going to notice that. And, I keep giving a lot of credit to Anna, but she is just so very good. In fact, I think I've joked with you that if you were to interview her and coach her, if she was working in a company, you would tell me to make her the CEO of the company and tell me just to go back to just working under her. That's what I guarantee. If you would say, you know what, Patrick, you're in the wrong role. You should put her in the role. So
that's funny. It's probably a lot of dads could replicate that feeling and emotion. If you were to think, in highlighting kind of what we talked about, obviously, and we'll make sure that the YouTube channel is linked, and so people can kind of check out, because there's a lot of subscribers. I think some of the videos you guys have done are great. They're very well put together. They tell great stories that I know our audience will enjoy to watch as well. But like thinking about the life lessons you've learned, the things you're working on as a dad right now, and kind of disconnecting, as you say, talking about patience, empathy. What would be like, if we were kind of to wrap up and kind of put a bow on this episode, is like, here are 3 actionable tasks that dads can be thinking about at home to become that ultimate leader of their home, what would you say is top of mind for you based on kind of what we've talked about today?
Yeah, actual tasks. One of them that I'm working on right now, and I hope that I can continue on is, I don't know how to phrase it properly, but it's recognizing like important moments. I say to teach a lesson, where you realize like you've had a moment with your family that is pretty impactful, and you can sense it where it's like, okay, let me just take at least 30 seconds to a minute just to talk about, I don't want to say the moral here, but just like something that you go back and remember. Because I'm thinking to myself like, how am I like I'm often wondering like, how am I going to instill the things in my kids that I hope that they grow up to be? And one of the things I've recognized is that more is caught than taught, in the sense that like they catch on to more of the example than the words that come out of your mouth. And I think that is something I'm constantly battling with. And I'm reminding myself like, hey, just don't forget your presence and your example will speak louder than the things you say. Because we've all heard that phrase of like, do as I say, not as I do. That's a common phrase of our parents or older generations that would say that. That's the number one more than anything. The other thing is I've heard this on so many of your podcasts from your guests, and I think it's right. Same thing I believe is you work on being present, and I have to give you a lot of credit to the fact that like I've never used TED-based questions. Now I have something to kind of like, kind of apply it to. Like I almost have this, my brain goes through this like process of going. And you've said before, the power is in the second, third, fourth question, right? And so I've got to ask the first question. I got to dig a little deep. In fact, I had maybe practiced it too hard a few months back when I was with my daughter till she finally said, she goes, why do you keep asking me so many questions? She got so annoyed. She's like, I just want to go back to playing. I'm like, all right, cool. And I was like, hey, look, I'm just trying to practice what Casey told me to do. Okay. All right, baby. And just chill, So, but she was a little annoyed with it. But I think what it is it's getting me the habit of being able to do that. So my second one would be like digging into these thought-based questions. And making sure that you can have those conversations with your family and kids. And then the biggest thing for me is in this trip has been trying to recognize bad habits that I had. I mean, being able to extract myself from my life has been awesome because it's now I'm having a whole new way of living. But like we talked about earlier is, well, now I have to be really thoughtful and with intent about what habits I'm going to create, with our family. What are we known for? And it's really important to me. I know a lot of dads always want to leave a legacy or talk about a legacy, and I don't know if my family, if you were anybody to ask like what's my family known for, but I do have this like burning desire to have some kind of legacy within our family. What are we known for? Like you just referenced before, if my son grows up and all he knows how to do is be good for his word and look someone in the eye and shake them with a firm handshake and be respectful, like you already got a great start in life, like you can learn a lot of the things, but that's a great way to start. And so to me, I think actionable item is just being conscious of what habits are you creating, or what habits are you breaking? And right now I'm working on so many of those.
What is one, if you feel comfortable sharing, tell us one bad habit you've stopped doing that you're proud of?
Yeah. I put my phone in my face all the time. So constantly have my phone on. In fact, we've gotten so good at it that like if I'm with my kids and I happen to pick up my phone, they'll just call me out. They're like, Dad. I'm like, oh, I know. They're like, okay, like believe me, there is a firm accountability amongst four of us right now. And I maybe a lot of dads who are just, remember I said on all the time, like that idea of being on all the time is just the worst. I even tell the employees of our company, I said, look, I don't want you to be on all the time. You know what that does? That creates burnout. Burnout creates unhappy people with poor boundaries. There's no black and white. Everything's gray. Everything's just, and everyone's suffering. It's the concept of multitasking. And I am heavily working on breaking that habit of multitasking right now.
Love it. Well, you got accountability partners in your 5 and 8 year old. Good job, Carson. And
yeah,
calling you out, and Viv for calling you out. I love it. All right, dude, this has been fun. Before we're gonna dive into the lightning round now, which is where I go completely random. And we go inside Uncle Rico, former college quarterback's head, to show how much I got some stuff screw loose up top. Are you ready?
Okay. Yep.
Okay. If you were to play any sport right now in the shape you're in, tell me what sport you'd play.
Well, I missed that part. I said if I was playing any sport, what?
If you were to play any sport right now, in the shape you're in right now, tell me what sport you'd play professionally.
Curling. Yeah, I would
Wow.
like to do curling. So
Is that did you spend time up in the Great White North curling?
no, but we stopped at a gas station. There was like literally a curling center, like where people go to like, practice. And I thought, oh, if only I had time to go in there. You know what I mean? This is just the sport you always watch on TV. Everyone's got a dad bod. Everyone can do it. However, when we were in Whistler, they had the opportunity to actually go down the bobsled, the Olympic bobsled, and I did that. In fact, we put out a YouTube video about it, and it was quite a rush. In fact, I learned that the ideal athlete for that sport, which I never would have thought, would be like an American football running back, because most of the athleticism comes in the early stage of pushing it. So you got to have short, stocky, strong legs and run fast, which I am none of those. So.
There we go. What's the last movie you watched?
Last movie I watched. Well, I didn't finish it, but we watched a portion of the first Harry Potter because we're trying to get my kids into Harry Potter. They like it. They saw it at the Lego store, and so we're trying to figure out if they're of the age to like it. But the last movie I finished was Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters.
Who are you going to call? There we go. What's the last book you read?
Well, the book I'm reading right now is called Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. Awesome book. And, the biggest takeaway I got from it is he talks about you got to figure out either you eliminate tasks, automate tasks, delegate tasks, or guess what? You're the guy that's got to do that task. And it's a great, great book. So
there we go. You're on a trip, so it's kind of like vacation. But if you were to put the trip on hold and book a vacation with your wife, where are you going right now?
World Series, Braves versus Astros. So
nice. There we go. Here we go. If there was a movie written about your life so far, what would be the title and who would play you?
Talking about me alone, it's probably going to be called Dumb and Dumber, and I'm probably going to get Jim Carrey to do it. But if you include my wife, things get a lot better. It's probably going to be some kind of love story where, like, the guy figures it out at the end because he's got this great woman. But yeah, I'd be Dumb and Dumber. So.
Love it.
Actually, you know what? No, I take it back. If it was my life, it'd probably be called The Burden of My Expectations. That's probably what it'd be called. So
I can feel for that one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And would Jim Carrey still star you?
Jim Carrey would still do it.
Okay. If I was to go to your phone right now without Carson and Vivian seeing it, because I'd get yelled at, but if they were to play the last song in your phone, what song would we hear?
Let me actually give you this last song I downloaded. It's all over the place. I got Apple Music. Oh, you know what's even funnier is last two songs I downloaded. One was called Dance Off by Macklemore. That gives you one side of it, right?
There we go.
And the other was Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up, because I heard it on Ted Lasso like 4 weeks ago. I said, that needs to be on my phone, So
I think it was you who told me that was one of the best videos ever.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, if you go back and watch the video now, because nobody ever really does. This would be fun. We should do a poll. Try to guess what the budget of that music video was. I'm going to say no more than like 2 cheeseburgers and maybe $100 bill. So
$49 and a Casio.
The cheapest video ever.
Oh boy. Okay. Last favorite 80s comedy movie.
Ooh, 80s comedy movie? Well, I'm a little younger than you, so I wasn't watching a lot of comedy movies in the 80s. I'm trying to think early 90s, which I already mentioned, Dumb and Dumber. I would say anything that had Chris Farley in it. Anybody that had
Tommy Boy.
Yeah, Tommy Boy was a great one. Yeah, that was like my generation of movies. You know what I mean? Like these were the guys that I was watching. And then, Will Ferrell was the next generation. So I really can't, I'm going to go Tommy Boy, but I really can't say 80s because I wasn't watching a ton of comedy 80s movies. So.
Well, Anthony Michael Hall is one you got to research. He had just gold, Weird Science, Johnny Be Good, a lot of beauties. And obviously Will Ferrell, I'm a big, I can see there's rich mahogany behind you right now. So, all right, you've made it to the lightning round. We've come to a close. I want to thank you, ma'am, for your time. It's been an honor to support you. It's been an honor to learn your story. It's been just great learning more about you. And I want to say, take a minute I know we gave love to old Bobby in the beginning from Acme Homes. If you're a family in the Seattle or area or Eastern Washington and you're looking for a home, they have amazing properties. They're currently running a special right now that gives they will be waiving fees for loans, so make sure you check them out. I also want to thank, as always, Assam and team up at Catch Seika Seafoods. I am almost about to run out of fish, which means I will be placing another order, getting the freshest fish shipped from dock to door directly to my house, right from the seas of the Sitka Harbor right there. And so if you're a seafood lover, give these guys a chance. Small family-owned business that is growing after the impacts of COVID, but there's one of the companies that you want to make sure we stay around. Patrick, last question. How can people follow you and learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so personally and professionally, I'm on LinkedIn. It's very easy to find. Patrick Sirmeyer, and you'll see us within Luxus with our company. But from the concept of our trip, which I would love to have people to just kind of check out our adventures. It's called The Sentient Life, and you can find us on YouTube and through our website, which is thesentient.life. And we really appreciate it. In fact, one of the things we really need is we're going to so many cool places that we actually need people who have been there to tell us what to see and do. So we would love to hear from anyone that wants to follow us. So.
There we go. I will make sure these links are in the show notes. Brother, thanks again for everything you're doing. Thanks for your vulnerability, honesty, and ways that you inspire me and other dads at home to attack our gaps so we can be better leaders of our kids and enjoy these experiences because they're going to go by way, way too fast. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, buddy. Appreciate it, man.